A fresh morning begins on the training ground, where two young men silently face each other amid gentle sunlight and the echoing chirping of birds. Chris stands still, his eyes tired, seemingly not fully awake after last night, but he tries to maintain a calm demeanor before his opponent. Roman looks back coldly, his sharp gaze silent, as if waiting to see what move Chris will make first. A prolonged silence stretches between them, leaving only the faint sunlight and an invisible tension gradually spreading in the air. Roman suddenly bursts out laughing sarcastically, making Chris grit his teeth in anger, wanting to shout out in frustration. Suppressing his anger, Chris sighs, forcing himself to stay calm, then begins to explain the concept of aura before the official training starts. A gentle purple smoke spreads in the air, marking the beginning of the explanation about aura, a special energy source in this world. Aura is a branch of mana, the main type of energy used by knights. The illustration shows a swirling purple energy flow, symbolizing awakening power. While mages store mana in the form of magic circles, an image of a mysterious mage appears, holding a radiant golden energy surrounding his hands. Completely different, knights let mana flow throughout their bodies. A knight in blazing white armor stands tall, showing power emanating from his entire body. The founder of aura usage was Emperor Alexander, known as the Pioneer. He was the first to discover a mana flow different from that of mages. Allowing mana to flow through the body enhances physical strength. Concentrating this mana and releasing it as a powerful strike is called aura. The blonde boy begins to explain, believing the origin of aura energy is not truly important, since only a few chosen people can use mana. He continues that among thousands of knights, only one can use aura, and even fewer become mages. The key is to determine whether a person can sense mana. The blonde emphasizes that the most basic condition to become an aura knight is the ability to sense mana, a boundary most knights cannot cross. Roman Dmitri shares that it took him half a year to sense mana, and doing so within a year is considered above standard. Calmly, Roman believes sensing mana is just a matter of skill. He nods, showing determination to try, and asks the other to teach him how. The blonde agrees, but his cold eyes and silent thoughts reveal jealousy. Though he agrees to guide, he vows Roman will not easily surpass the mana challenge as he did with swordsmanship. Roman thinks to himself that he does not need this official training. He has already sensed the energy, called mana, of this world. With some innate divine power, he has gathered a small amount of mana within his body. However, Roman realizes blindly following the old path only leads to failure. Though he does not fully understand everything yet, he is determined to learn according to how this world operates. The instructor begins the training, telling Roman to breathe deeply and focus. He explains that it is important to feel a tingling sensation on the skin, the first sign that the body is responding to mana. The instructor continues explaining that if mana is controlled skillfully, Roman will be able to realize a type of power called aura. When all mana in the body is gathered into one point, that is when aura is born. When aura is realized for the first time, the user is considered a level 1 aura knight. Aura can be applied in many ways, such as covering weapons to increase attack power. Besides enhancing weapon strength, aura can also be applied directly to the user's body, significantly increasing defense and physical ability. As the instructor was still speaking about creating an explosive power surge, a loud sound rang out. A sudden wave of energy appeared, leaving him stunned. Roman stands proudly amid a radiant aura. His entire body blazes with intense aura energy, causing those facing him to be astonished and step back. The instructor glares, mouth agape in shock. He cannot believe what he is seeing. In his mind, only one phrase echoes: impossible. The undeniable truth: Roman has truly activated his aura. While others take months to sense mana, he managed to do it almost instantly. The swirling air around Roman gently fluctuates. The energy flows naturally and steadily, as if this is something obvious to him. Roman sighs softly, his cold eyes shining with confidence. Deep inside, he confirms what he already knew. He was right, and aura is no challenge for him. The protagonist despises the energy absorption method of this world, considering it completely useless. He recalls Murim's cultivation method, purifying the body and accumulating energy in the danshan, something this world cannot achieve. He continues comparing, pointing out that in Murim, energy is scarce but very pure. Meanwhile, this world's mana is abundant but diluted and light, unable to be stored inside and only used as it is consumed. The protagonist believes the way aura is created here resembles external martial arts in Murim, only training external strength. Although it can increase power, this method cannot compare to true internal cultivation because mana cannot be accumulated inside the body. Not only weak in internal accumulation, he also judges that releasing the already limited mana makes this method inefficient, wasteful, and far below true cultivation standards. With sharp insight, the character concludes that with this method, humans will never reach the peak of power. Disappointment is clear in his eyes as he wonders, how? The trainer is stunned and bombards questions, unable to believe his eyes. Roman Dmitri actually created a complete aura on his first try. Amazement fills the entire atmosphere. The long-haired young man is shocked, unable to believe what he just witnessed. He shouts in disbelief, not understanding how the other could easily create an aura that took him years to achieve. Unable to stay calm, he yells accusingly that the other knew how to use aura beforehand and deliberately lured him just to provoke and taunt. Anger surges. He recalls a fight 2 years ago and thinks he should have realized the truth then. He does not understand why the other hid his power all this time. Facing suspicion, the other calmly denies it, saying it was all imagination in his opponent's mind. He asserts that if it wasn't hiding power, then what is happening is truly illogical. The black-haired man just laughs. The sarcastic "ha" startles and confuses his opponent. The long-haired boy instinctively steps back, feeling insulted. He asks why the other is laughing, to which the other coldly replies, because this is too ridiculous. His hand clenches tightly, voice full of resentment, questioning whether the other is belittling his years of effort and hard training. The black-haired man smiles with sharp eyes. He casually asks if during all his training he ever doubted the method he was following. The unexpected question hits like a strong blow to his psyche. He stands silent, eyes stunned. His heart seems to beat with a thump, a direct strike to his already shaken faith. The blonde boy is confused by the other's meaning, while the other begins explaining that many mistakenly believe the method passed down through generations is the only path. Recalling his learning process about aura from his teacher, he begins to question the correctness of that method, doubting if there might be a more effective path. He continues questioning inwardly, not understanding why the trainer stubbornly clings to a method that clearly has many flaws. The thought led him to 2 possibilities. Either the teacher knew nothing better, or he blindly followed because he trusted Captain Jonathan too much. But then he realized the real reason was very simple. The reason is that imitation is the easiest way. Following old instructions helps people avoid risks and responsibility if they fail. Nevertheless, the other still praised his perseverance through 10 years of hard training. He frankly pointed out the absurdity of how he never once questioned the method he pursued, despite investing a whole decade into it. As they walked together, the young man continued, saying there is no perfect answer in life, and even blindly following someone else's path is the result of someone else's thoughts who faced a similar problem. However, if a method is rigidly applied inappropriately, it will only become useless self-torment. Despite many failures, if no results are achieved, one must accept criticism and pain, be willing to change, just as he once abandoned his father's path to find his own and reach the peak of power. The student choked up, disappointment and torment revealed in his trembling voice. The words deeply moved him, and he could no longer hold back his emotions. Jung-hyuk slightly turned his head at the call, his eyes cold but also carrying a hint of expectation, as if he was waiting for something from the other. The student stopped, turned resolutely, raised his head and said, "Then, show me what I must do." The seriousness in his eyes clearly showed his determination to change. Confusion overwhelmed his mind, facing the uncertain path ahead. At that moment, a painful scene appeared. A person collapsed in a pool of blood, hand clutching the ground, revealing utter despair. The scene shifted to a blood-soaked battlefield. Under the blazing red sunset, a warrior fell before a superior opponent. The other stood firm, merciless, like a final judging god. The defeated gasped, bloodied and battered, looked up and bowed in submission. In broken voice was complete surrender. "Blood Demon Sect, I pledge allegiance to you, Jung-hyuk B." As Jung-hyuk turned to leave, the defeated struggled to sit up, bleeding from the hand, urgently shouting, "Wait." He bowed his head, looked at the broken sword on the ground, and tearfully admitted he had never met anyone as strong as Jung-hyuk, earnestly asking what he must do to become as strong as him. With unprecedented humility, the loser bowed in submission, believing that if he wanted to serve Jung-hyuk, he himself needed to become truly strong. He cried out desperately, begging Jung-hyuk to teach him the way to gain power like his. While others were stunned by the sudden plea, Cal calmly observed with a scrutinizing gaze, unable to hide some surprise. Jung-hyuk slightly narrowed his eyes, realizing the person before him had cast aside all pride and was ready to bow in pursuit of progress. The corner of his mouth twitched into a faint smile, a clear sign of interest. With cold eyes and a low voice, Jung-hyuk remarked that this situation was interesting, hinting that the opponent's surrender might be a turning point for something greater. He is Blood Demon, the founder of the Blood Demon sect who personally rose to lead that brutal organization, with blazing red eyes and surging murderous intent. As one of the most powerful warriors, Blood Demon once ruled the entire martial world, an opponent not to be underestimated in the demon realm. With the power to command the demon realm, a confrontation with Baek Jung-hyuk was inevitable, and the battle between the two strong men erupted fiercely. The fight was intense and fierce, but in the end, Blood Demon could not avoid defeat at Jung-hyuk's hands. At that moment, Blood Demon abandoned his pride and bowed his head, begging Baek Younghyuk to teach him how to become stronger. Chris is just like Blood Demon years ago, carrying a thirst for power and willing to let go of pride to gain strength. Noticing the similarity between Chris and Blood Demon, Younghyuk smiled with interest, seeing it as something intriguing. Younghyuk asked again, as if to confirm Chris's determination, "Do you really want to know how to become stronger?" When Chris eagerly wanted an answer, Younghyuk refused to teach directly, affirming, "That I cannot teach you." Younghyuk explained that if Chris blindly followed instructions, he would never change. If he truly wanted to grasp something, he must always stay by his side, no matter what happens. The man in red declared that in 6 months, he would leave for the battlefield. He called on the other to observe his journey of strengthening through battles and how he defeated enemies. He ended his words with a condition. If after 10 years the other still stayed by his side, then surely he would find the answer he was seeking. The night sky descended, evoking silence and solemnity in the mood of the one reflecting on the recent words. The window scene showed dim light shining into the room, signaling it was late at night, but the person inside was still awake. Chris sat quietly on the bed with a pensive expression, seemingly struggling with emotions and thoughts within. Chris put his hands on his face, sighed tiredly and under pressure, showing frustration about the arduous journey ahead. During training, the instructor announced that their goal was to feel the flow of mana inside their bodies. A trainee was amazed at another's progress speed when he could sense mana after only half a year. 2 others were surprised to learn someone had opened their aura after just 3 years, considering him a true genius. The trainer declared Chris had reached level 2 Aura Knight, recognizing his effort over 10 years. However, he also mocked that Chris had never once questioned whether the method he pursued was wrong. Chris clenched his fists tightly, his eyes blazing with fierce determination. He finally had an answer for the path he chose. In a silent moment at the academy, Chris called his teacher over with a surprising declaration. The teacher was shocked and asked again, unable to believe what he just heard from the student he had taught for 10 years. Chris firmly declared that he would follow Lord Roman to the battlefield because his greatest desire was to become stronger. The teacher was stunned, but quickly realized something had changed in Chris after the training session. Chris confirmed with a serious look. This was no longer a rash statement, but a will that had been forged. They looked at each other silently. Between them was respect and understanding that needed no words. Finally, the teacher nodded in agreement. He believed Chris had thought carefully and had his own reasons for deciding so. The teacher solemnly declared that from this moment on, Chris was no longer a member of Dimitri's Knights, but he entrusted him with an honorable mission to protect Lord Roman at all costs. Chris bowed deeply in gratitude. His eyes shone with thankfulness and determination not to disappoint his teacher. The captain looked at Chris with deep eyes and gently said, "I understand now." He realized that Chris was no longer the weak boy he once was. Memories of the battlefield surged. The captain recalled the bloody moments on the front lines when he witnessed countless lives fall in despair. Amid the ruins, a boy knelt beside his mother's body, his small hands trembling as he tried to rouse her. War had taken away the most beloved person in his life. That very boy, with his pitiful cries and eyes full of despair, became an indelible memory in the captain's mind, a beginning for Chris's determination today. The captain placed his hand on the table, looking at Chris with resolve. He admitted that Chris had changed, no longer the one who once underestimated Lord Roman, but a true soldier ready to follow a new ideal. Without hesitation, the captain stood up and signaled, "Follow me, we need to start preparing." Chris was surprised by the quick agreement but quietly followed behind, his heart full of determination. The captain seriously advised Chris that if he wanted to survive on the battlefield, he needed to have his own secret weapon, something that would become his lifeline in the harsh world ahead. Chris was stunned by the teaching, then smiled brightly, filled with gratitude. He felt motivated and sincerely thanked the captain for giving him new faith. From afar, Kevin was stunned watching the scene. He suddenly realized this might be how the young master's old promise was fulfilled, a silent but meaningful act. Kevin quietly shed tears, both moved and unbelieving. Though his heart denied it, he choked up thinking that he would no longer be burdened by the unreasonable debt, a new beginning just opening. A call snapped Kevin back to reality. A colleague reminded him to finish work quickly to go home, and Kevin hurriedly responded, his emotions still unsettled. Under the brilliant sunset sky, clouds drifted silently, as if signaling a new chapter about to begin, where today's quiet decisions would shape tomorrow's fate. Kevin walked quietly, each step carrying heavy determination in his heart. While working, he thought silently. He wanted to become strong like Lord Roman, to be someone who could protect loved ones no matter what dangers arose. Clenching his fists tightly, Kevin remembered cruel enemies like Blood Fang still out there. For his family, he had to be even stronger. Sighing on the peaceful street, he pondered how to become stronger. In his heart, he hoped to meet Lord Roman once again, the one who had planted hope within him. At that moment, a voice called out, "Kevin!" He froze and turned around with surprised eyes. Kevin's eyes widened in astonishment. It seemed what he thought impossible was gradually becoming reality before his eyes. When the name Lord unexpectedly escaped Kevin's lips, the box of sweet potatoes he was carrying fell to the ground with a loud crash, sending dust swirling everywhere. Standing before Kevin was a familiar man in formal attire, eyes surprised as he said, "Lord Roman," then gently added, "Long time no see." Kevin was flustered and emotional facing Roman. He stammered, asking why he had come here, but before hearing the answer, he hurried to say something more important. Unable to contain his feelings, Kevin quickly bowed in thanks. Filled with gratitude, he expressed that thanks to Roman, his family had survived the dangerous times. Roman smiled and inquired about Kevin's current situation. Kevin happily replied that everything was fine, the blood fangs were no longer a threat, and with Hans's help he had quickly found a job. Kevin was so grateful that he didn't know how to properly thank him. Roman maintained a calm smile and gently made an offer, saying this could be an opportunity for Kevin to repay him, a subtle invitation. Kevin was stunned by the offer, his eyes wide as he looked up at Roman. Before him, Roman calmly promised a full future. Kevin's family would no longer worry about daily needs. They would have a peaceful home and delicious meals. Kevin fell silent with emotion, envisioning the future Roman painted. No longer struggling to survive, his family would live happily and completely. Roman gently affirmed he himself would ensure that became reality. However, in return, Roman demanded absolute devotion. He not only promised Kevin a new life, but also set a condition, absolute loyalty. As long as Kevin pledged loyalty, Roman would grant him a completely different life. Kevin looked straight at Roman, his eyes wide open, his mind shaken by the great change fate had just brought. Between emotion and overwhelm, he could not speak a word. Speechless, Kevin could only swallow hard. All of Roman's promises pierced deeply into his heart, an offer too great, too sudden, and too difficult to refuse. Then, without hesitation, Kevin knelt down and bowed deeply before Roman. That act was the clearest answer. He had decided to devote his full loyalty in exchange for a new beginning for himself and his family. Kevin bowed low to the ground, his voice trembling with strong emotion. He vowed to dedicate his entire life to Lord Roman without hesitation. Blood flowed from his forehead, but Kevin kept his head bowed. He pledged to obey every order, even if the price was his own life. Lifting his head in pain, Kevin declared firmly, as long as Lord Roman promised to take care of his family, death meant nothing to him. Roman looked at Kevin with deep eyes. The bloody devotion reminded him of the one once called Mad Demon, a loyal man willing to shed blood just to prove his loyalty. Roman recalled the past. In an instant, Mad Demon had charged alone into hundreds of enemies for him, regardless of life or death. He never retreated, no matter the situation. Looking at Kevin kneeling under the sunset light, Roman smiled cunningly. The memory of Blood Demon appeared in his mind, and he thought silently, "Lucky I came personally to find him." A magnificent castle appeared under the gentle light of the clear blue sky. This was the place marking the beginning of a new chapter in Kevin's life. Standing before the castle entrance, Roman entrusted Kevin to Hans, instructing him to help the boy adapt to his new life. Hans bowed respectfully to accept the order, while Kevin silently stood beside him, his eyes shining with hope. Roman smiled at Kevin one last time before leaving. Kevin bowed in gratitude, his voice full of emotion. He knew well that this favor was the greatest turning point in his life. Before turning away, Roman added that if he needed to meet, he should come to the Dmitri library to find him. Kevin once again responded with respect, memorizing that place in his heart. Roman left, leaving Kevin and Hans in the vast hallway. Hans offered to take Kevin on a tour of the house, and Kevin could not hide his excitement, quickly agreeing. The door leading into the library opened, revealing a solemn and magnificent scene. Massive bookshelves, abundant light, and a quiet atmosphere filled the space, where Kevin's future would begin to be written. Inside the Dmitri library, soft light shone on thick stacks of books piled on the table, revealing a scene prepared for serious study. The young man sat reading attentively, gently turning the page when he came across the title, "The Path of an Aura Knight," his eyes pausing thoughtfully. The text in the book emphasized, to become an Aura Knight, one must first successfully summon Aura energy, from which one can achieve the title of Level 1 Aura Knight. The information continued, a Level 2 Aura Knight must have the ability to cut through steel using Aura energy. After that, levels are determined based on the strength of the aura. Level 3 aura is a milestone that ordinary knights cannot reach, but anyone who attains this level or higher is specially favored in the kingdoms. In the Salamander Kingdom, there have been knights who reached level 6 aura, but throughout history, no one has been recorded to surpass level 7. Even among the 10 strongest knights according to the official ranking system, not all have reached level 6 in aura, a testament to the difficulty and rarity of this power. The young man began comparing his acquaintances with the ranking system he just read. Chris is a level 2 aura knight, while Jonathan is at level 3, perhaps only slightly below the second tier. According to records, reaching level 6 means surpassing the normal physical limits of humans, an unimaginable milestone in martial arts. A level 6 aura, when channeled through a sword, can emit power extending tens of meters, and its destructive force far exceeds human limits. Across the continent, only 12 people have been recorded to reach level 6. Regardless of nationality, they are revered as symbols of power, called the 12 Swords of the Continent. The reader sat in contemplation amid candlelight, clearly feeling the majesty of the knights through each line of the book. He realized they had reached the peak of their strength, but the journey was not over. Now it was time to learn about mages. Roman continued studying documents in the library, moving on to a new topic, magic. Seriousness was evident on his face as he opened another book, ready to explore powers beyond this world's reality. The topic, High Mages, appeared, beginning a completely new chapter. Mages who reach 7 circles of magic power are honored as High Mages, almost divine beings with destructive power like living disasters. Roman was amazed to learn that with just one spell, High Mages could crush the ground and tear apart the sky. Because of this overwhelming power, they inspire more fear than even level 6 swordsmen. Reflecting on the information he had just read, Roman realized magic is a form of power that did not exist in Murim, his old world. Now he clearly understood what his new goal was. Roman gently placed his hand on the book, his gaze serious. He knew that anyone within these pages could become his enemy in the future. Although the possibility was small, Roman Dmitri did not allow himself to be careless. With determined eyes, Roman thought silently, the future is unpredictable, and that makes it more dangerous than ever. His will grew stronger on the path of preparing for all upcoming dangers. Before a hellish red scene, the young man with silver hair tied high stood silently, telling himself that he was not born to live a peaceful life. What he pursued was power and domination through real experience. With eyes full of determination, Roman thought he could no longer wait. Now was the time to begin preparing for the path to conquer power. In the quiet space, footsteps echoed as Roman approached a locked room, the place hiding the first step in his harsh training plan. The old wooden door creaked open, revealing Roman's figure entering inside, where the morning light touched the dusty wooden floor. The butler led Roman to the threshold, smiling and saying they had arrived. Roman looked up at the room, full of curiosity about its purpose. The butler explained that this was Lord Romero's old workshop, a place isolated from the outside world, once completely forbidden to strangers, and built to absolutely block outside air. Roman nodded with satisfaction. With such secrecy and quietness, he believed this was the ideal environment to begin serious training. Turning back to give instructions, Roman asked Hans to leave him here for a whole week, without providing anything, not even food. He wanted complete solitude, undisturbed. He emphasized the order. Unless a family member was in danger, no one was allowed to come to him. Isolation was a prerequisite for this grueling training process. Faced with a firm command, Hans could only respond with a worried but obedient expression. "Yes, sir." He swallowed hard, understanding that Roman was ready to enter a challenge with no way back. The old door slowly opened, light from outside streaming in, breaking the darkness in the sealed room, signaling the start of a new phase. Roman stepped in, his eyes serious, the floor echoing heavy sounds as he decisively closed the past behind to fully focus on cultivation. His gaze fell on the straw-covered floor throughout the room, carefully prepared by Hans, creating a warm yet simple space. Roman bent down to check, silently grateful for Hans's kindness, but quickly realized this layer of straw would obstruct energy flow during meditation. Without hesitation, he pushed the straw aside, clearing the space to prepare for maximum concentration on cultivation. Finally, he sat down in the middle of the room, crossed his legs, formed hand seals, closed his eyes, breathing slowly and steadily, entering a deep meditative state. Roman exhaled gently, mentally assessing his current energy, realizing that the mana accumulated so far was only a foundational start. He clearly understood that to perfectly use the divine power within this body, he had to begin from the first step in mastering energy. With a calm but firm voice, Roman recited the command, starting the first technique, Divine Force, Step 1. Energy from his body surged fiercely, causing the room to tremble as Roman began channeling mana throughout his body to purify all impurities inside. Roman realized the mana flow in his body was severely blocked, and the amount of impurities far exceeded average levels. Though his body ached, he had anticipated this. That was why he proactively stored a certain amount of mana beforehand to overcome the first challenge. "I must restore my old strength as quickly as possible," Roman silently vowed, his eyes blazing with determination. He was no longer alone as before. Alongside his great goal, he had created new bonds, people who needed protection, reasons why he could not fail. Roman closed his eyes, the heat around him rising. To protect those people and achieve his goal, he had to enter a new phase, the human phase. A week later, footsteps echoed steadily on the marble corridor, signaling an impending change. The large door gently opened, golden light spilling into the magnificent interior, revealing a solemn place awaiting distinguished guests. A butler bowed respectfully, inviting the two guests inside. He quickly left to prepare tea and pastries as usual. The two guests, Viscount Lawrence and Miss Flora, quietly entered the luxurious room, their eyes showing curiosity and anticipation. Viscount Lawrence inquired about Roman and was informed by the butler that he was busy handling unfinished business. As the servant left, the door closed with a dry thud, leaving Viscount Lawrence and Miss Flora standing in the elegant but silent room, in an atmosphere heavy with tension and lack of hospitality. Viscount Lawrence sighed, his eyes tired as he admitted they had arrived unannounced, but could not deny the clear coldness from the host. He sat down calmly, instructing Flora to sit and wait. The girl quietly obeyed, listening to her father in silence and waiting tensely. Once both were settled, Viscount Lawrence turned to call his daughter's name, his serious gaze prompting Flora to respond cautiously, awaiting the instructions to come. He emphasized the purpose of this visit, not to argue or blame, but to correct mistakes and mend relations. Flora was briefly confused, quickly nodding anxiously, remembering to be careful with her words. Amid the quiet castle scene, a sudden angry shout cut through the air. The engagement has been cancelled, signaling a new wave of tension approaching. Flora looked at her father worriedly, trying to justify that she had clearly expressed her feelings to Roman during their last meeting and truly wanted to follow her father's advice. She choked on her words, trying to say she could not marry someone she did not respect, but was immediately shouted down by her father, cutting her off. In his anger, Viscount Lawrence could not control his emotions. He held his head, frustrated that Flora had done something so disappointing. He loudly reminded that the family faced a serious threat, revealing that House Barco had borrowed a large sum from the Golden Bank, putting the future of their territory in danger. The flames of war roared behind him, soldiers panicked in chaotic scenes. Viscount Lawrence's assertion thundered. War was only a matter of time. Viscount Lawrence collapsed into his chair, his face sorrowful. He confessed that the marriage with House Dimitri was the only choice to confront House Barco. He could not believe Flora had caused everything to collapse. Flora anxiously rebutted, trying to defend the pride of their territory. She believed Lawrence was not weak and could win even without House Dimitri's help. The Viscount sighed wearily. He explained that if only House Barco acted alone, there might still be hope. But in reality, the central government would not accept that those documents could be forged. He continued analyzing that Golden Bank's loan to House Barco without collateral showed the matter was beyond their control, and greater forces were behind it. He firmly stated that House Barco would call for alliances with other powers, pushing them into a war with no chance of victory for Lawrence. In the heavy atmosphere, the Viscount warned sternly, enemies would use every opportunity to seize everything, from land and honor to their very future. Finally, he ended with a cold remark like a blade. Even Flora, the shining jewel of Lawrence, would become a target if they did not act carefully. Flora clenched her hands on her dress, regret rising within her. She admitted she knew everything but stubbornly followed her own will. Sitting silently on the chair, Flora recalled the situation their territory was facing, fully understanding the reason her father made that decision. Yet, she still dismissed everything for her personal desires. Flora calmed herself. She closed her eyes, clenched her teeth with determination, refusing to continue being Lawrence's useless, beautiful flower. The evening sky gradually darkened, signaling the passage of time. A peaceful moment before the storm was about to break. A soldier paced anxiously, silently wondering what to do. He waited nervously, eagerly anticipating Roman's arrival. The soldier looked up at the sky, filled with worry. Viscount Lawrence and Miss Flora had been waiting since morning, and the sun was about to set. He thought about Viscount Lawrence's dwindling patience, but Roman's order was still not to disturb him, making the soldier even more hesitant. A creaking sound startled the soldier. His eyes turned toward the door that had just opened slightly. He hurried over, calling anxiously inside, unsure whether Roman had finished his task or not. Looking up, the soldier was stunned to see Roman's appearance. The astonishment was clear on his face as he exclaimed in amazement. The afternoon sunlight dyed the luxurious window frame golden, signaling an intense conversation about to begin between two people bearing the responsibilities of the Lawrence family. The porcelain teacup trembled softly in silence, the creaking sound echoing as a reflection of the tension weighing heavily on the hearts of father and son. Viscount Lawrence and Flora sat facing each other in the magnificent room. Both were lost in heavy thoughts, preparing to face unavoidable consequences. Flora silently thought she had prepared herself mentally for this terrible event. But now, she could not deny that it all stemmed from her own mistakes. Viscount Lawrence, with a pensive expression, admitted that the current situation forced them to proceed with the arranged marriage. For him, it was no longer a choice, but a matter of survival. Though trying to appear resolute, Viscount Lawrence's tightly clenched hands betrayed the inner turmoil he felt. He could not help but wonder, is there any other way? In a surge of anger, Viscount Lawrence clenched his fists, his eyes blazing with determination. He could not accept the unfolding truth. Everything was so wrong that he could no longer sit still. Flora was startled when she saw her father suddenly jump up from his chair. She called out weakly, but in her eyes was unease as she realized his actions would lead to something serious. Without hesitation, Viscount Lawrence declared he would personally go to meet Baron Dmitri. Despite knowing the political situation was extremely sensitive, he decided to face the lord of the territory who had rejected his family himself. Immediately after, his hand quickly wrote a letter, leaving necessary messages. Each stroke of ink carried the weight of an irrevocable decision. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, signaling the arrival of a man carrying both anger and deep disappointment. The door slammed open forcefully. Viscount Lawrence roared, calling Baron Dimitri's name, accusing him of serious disrespect to an honored guest. Flora followed behind, her face stunned by her father's sudden firmness. Viscount Lawrence shouted angrily, confronting Baron Dmitri harshly over his indifference. He blamed him for not sending them away immediately if he did not want to receive them, and accused the Dmitri household of pettiness. Baron Dmitri silently observed his opponent, his face calm but his eyes clearly showing displeasure, not immediately reacting to the accusation. Baron Dmitri sighed, admitting he understood what the Viscount was saying but questioned the reasonableness of the meeting, reminding that they had never arranged to meet beforehand. Viscount Lawrence admitted they came without notice, but justified that he had sent a meeting request a week earlier and was refused. He believed the silence from Baron forced him to act. Baron Dmitri calmly responded, questioning whether the Viscount would really have left if refused at the door, implying that his current attitude was merely the result of stubbornness and pride. Baron Dmitri continued in a calm but cold tone, asking back wearily, "Anyway, is that all you want to say?" The blond man reacted with surprise at Baron Dimitri's blunt question, while Flora stood beside him looking embarrassed and speechless. Baron Dmitri recalled the day Flora visited the Dmitri mansion, which was also the day Roman expressed his desire to end the engagement. Baron Dmitri recounted that he had reprimanded Roman and made him take responsibility, but the reason Roman opposed the engagement was very clear. He continued, saying that although he knew everything was Flora's fault, he did not go to the Lawrence house to question them. He remained silent, pretending ignorance and letting things pass according to his son's wishes. Baron Dmitri affirmed that it was the blond man himself who decided to cancel the engagement, leaving him no grounds to object. Baron Dmitri concluded that it was the Lawrence family who initially proposed this marriage, while Flora bowed her head in shame, unable to face it. Baron Dmitri clenched his fist in anger, criticizing Viscount Lawrence for coming to his house unannounced and shouting just because he had to wait too long. Unable to contain his anger, Baron Dmitri slammed his hand on the table, accusing Viscount Lawrence of acting as if he were innocent despite coming unannounced. Faced with the host's relentless reproach, both Viscount Lawrence and Flora remained silent, cold sweat dripping from their brows due to embarrassment and pressure. In the spacious library, the two guests stood opposite Baron Dmitri. A tense atmosphere enveloped the room as he prepared to reveal an important truth. Baron Dmitri disclosed that a month ago, he had received an offer from House Barco to exchange the engagement for a Barco heir in return for political power and land support from Lawrence. He affirmed that he had rejected that tempting offer. As ink spilled on the table, he coldly asked Viscount Lawrence if he knew why he refused it. Viscount Lawrence, with a confused expression, did not understand why such a beneficial offer from Barco was declined. He could not believe anyone would give up such a favorable agreement. Count Dmitri calmly replied that the reason was simple. The Dmitri lands already held enough power. Therefore, he was fully capable of refusing the offer without hesitation. Mr. Dmitri continued to assert that his eldest son, Roman, truly loved Miss Flora. That sincere affection was the only reason he was willing to declare war on Barco. After being exposed for his lack of consideration, Viscount Lawrence fell into a state of shame and regret. He silently blamed himself for letting emotions control him, leading to a serious mistake out of pride. Dmitri gently but firmly emphasized that both sides knew Roman and Flora were incompatible. However, he stressed that the Lawrence family should understand the value that the Dmitri name brought. The image of the Dmitri family's sword and shield appeared, along with the assertion that once the Dmitri name was attached to Roman, his value would far exceed imagination. Dmitri looked directly at both parties and emphasized that it was the Lawrence lands that needed this marriage, not the Dmitri family. Dimitri's frank declaration threw Flora into a whirlwind of thoughts. He said it was Lawrence who needed this engagement, not them, causing her to begin doubting everything. Flora stood silently, her heart heavy, wondering if she was wrong. In the surrounding gloom, confusion and remorse were clearly visible in her eyes. At that moment, a sudden memory flooded Flora's mind, a childhood memory when she was studying at the academy, where early wishes and youthful ambitions began to form. The academy where Flora once studied was a gathering place for descendants of the kingdom's most prestigious noble families, an environment full of competition and pressure. Among them was a boy from a remote northeastern clan, whose existence many even doubted, a family without influence, only retaining noble status in name. That boy belonged to the Joel family, quiet, shy, and always bowing his head in class, as if carrying both insecurity and the fragile burden of honor on his shoulders. While other noble children believed themselves to be precious gifts bestowed by the world, Joel was an exception, different, silent, and humble. One day, Joel accidentally broke a vase in class, a minor incident but enough to stir turmoil within the academy walls. In a place where noble children could make mistakes without punishment, even a small error from Joel was considered serious enough to warrant discipline. Joel was called before the class, facing the supervisors while his classmates just stared. He felt like a defendant in a trial. Not only was Joel criticized, but the man who appeared to be his father also bowed his head to apologize on his son's behalf, enduring humiliation without protest. He begged the academy to give his son another chance and promised to discipline him more strictly, while the other children, including Flora, stood by watching. Flora quietly witnessed the entire event at that time. Although she was young, only one thought remained in her heart: how pitiful! And now, looking back, she finds it all ironic. Now recalling it, the girl, the eldest daughter of the Lawrence family, can only remain silent, unable to justify the emotions of the past. In front of a powerful gentleman, she bowed her head to take the blame for her daughter, admitting that her daughter was wrong for misplaced sympathy. She admitted to having acted arrogantly and disrespectfully. Now, as the Lawrence family faces a situation similar to the Joel family years ago, she bows her head in sincere apology and regret. While bowing to express her remorse, the woman's apology to Baron Dimitri was interrupted by a solemn call. "Sir." All three turned to look behind upon hearing the call, their eyes fixed on the opening door. The door opened, and a voice announced the arrival of Lord Roman, the newcomer. The girl's eyes widened in shock, as if unable to believe what she had just heard. Footsteps echoed firmly on the tiled floor, signaling the arrival of an important figure. Roman appeared in striking red and white attire, walking leisurely yet full of charisma, attracting all eyes. His face was clearly visible under the light, serious, calm, but his eyes held determination and deep understanding. Roman entered the room with a composed demeanor, politely greeting his father. His unexpected appearance left everyone in the room, especially Countess Lawrence, visibly astonished. Baron Dimitri looked at his son with surprise and emotion. He asked if Roman's training had finished, receiving a brief but firm reply: "Yes." The father set aside the previous topic and moved on to a more important matter, suggesting they discuss the engagement afterward. He solemnly announced that the reason for calling his son today was to talk about the engagement with the Lawrence family. Pointing to the ink stain on the table, he emphasized that everything stemmed from his son's decision, and he was ready to support any choice Roman made. The young man quietly accepted his father's words, fully understanding the meaning behind them, causing Flora nearby to flinch slightly. He affirmed that he completely understood the great purpose behind connecting the two families, showing maturity and insight. His father presented the fact that House Barco was threatening Lawrence, while Dimitri's resources could ensure safety in the current situation. Upon hearing this reminder, the father was surprised that his son still chose to proceed with the marriage, and Roman confirmed it was because he believed it was worth doing at that time. But everything changed from the first meeting with Flora, when she proactively expressed her wish to cancel the engagement, causing him to immediately change his mind. Flora silently bowed her head, her face showing a trace of remorse. Roman understood why she wanted to cancel the engagement, guessing she had believed rumors calling him foolish Roman and did not want to be bound to someone like that. Roman calmly continued, affirming that regardless of how the world viewed him, what he wanted was to be with someone who made decisions based on experience and truth, not vague rumors. Roman's voice deepened as he prepared to conclude his thoughts, clearly implying that what he was about to say would be his final decision after everything that had happened. A close-up of the Lawrence father and daughter's expressions showed confusion and heartbreak. Flora remained silent, her eyes cast down, while her father looked pensive and worried, realizing the consequences of hasty actions. Roman firmly affirmed his stance. His eyes were resolute as he declared that he would maintain his original intention. He would proceed with canceling the engagement with Flora without changing his decision. Roman hesitated to speak, his eyes serious and determined. He was about to make the final decision, beginning an important declaration. To the surprise of Lord Lawrence and Flora's bowed gaze, Roman calmly affirmed his unchanging stance. He would not accept this arranged marriage. With a decisive voice, Roman declared his desire to officially cancel the engagement, ending the bond between the two once anticipated families. The atmosphere in the room seemed to sink as Roman turned his back and left. Lord Lawrence and Flora stood silently, while someone's inner voice echoed, "It's over." Lord Lawrence sighed inwardly. This marriage was their last pawn. Now, with their honor damaged, no family wanted to ally with the Lawrences anymore. Facing isolation, Lord Lawrence resolved to bear the burden alone. He understood clearly that now they could only rely on their own strength to overcome. However, he also worried that if Dmitri and Barco allied, the Lawrence family would fall into despair, and failure would be inevitable. Hoping to prevent that scenario, Lord Lawrence bowed deeply before Roman. He was ready to take full responsibility for what had happened. He declared that Lawrence would exempt all merchants from Dmitri from taxes as an apology, also showing goodwill for reconciliation, even though he knew this was insignificant compared to Roman's wealth. However, Roman's father flatly refused. He affirmed that he would never exploit his son's future in exchange for political benefits for the family. Flora spoke calmly, suggesting her family announce that the cancellation of the engagement was her voluntary decision for personal reasons. In return, she promised that the Dmitri house would not ally with Barco. Flora's father bowed his head, his voice full of gratitude, sincerely thanking them for the mercy they had just been granted. In the solemn atmosphere and soft light, Flora and her father bowed together before Roman Dmitri and the Lord, repeating their thanks with respect. The door echoed with a prolonged sound as it began to open, marking the end of this important dialogue. Flora and her father passed through the door, quietly leaving the room, carrying the complex emotions of an outcome they could not change. Before leaving completely, Count Lawrence turned his head back, his eyes looking toward Roman with regret and contemplation. Roman stood silently beside his father, his gaze cold but calm, as if weighing the consequences of the recent decision. Lawrence finally realized the true nature of Roman Dmitri, full of value and charisma. He regretted not recognizing it sooner to prevent Flora from making a hasty decision. As the door closed, only a bitter acknowledgement remained in his heart. He himself had made a serious mistake. The story ended with Lawrence leaving in silence, carrying deep regret over an alliance lost due to prejudices and wrong judgments. The large door closed in bright light with decisive footsteps approaching, signaling someone was near, breaking the silence in the council room. Roman Dmitri and his father sat facing each other in the magnificent room, silence enveloping them as silent tension rose. Baron Dmitri spoke softly to his son, while Roman responded calmly, showing a clear change in his demeanor. The father's suspicious gaze drilled into his son, as he could not understand what had caused Roman to change so much in just a short week. Roman recalled the harsh training process at the abandoned hermitage, where he purified his body with blood and pain to enter the human realm. During training, Roman focused on laying the foundation for his divine power to manifest, although for Murim warriors, this was only the beginning. In this world, mana was abundant by nature, but Roman's body had previously been full of impurities, hindering energy absorption. Removing impurities and building a foundation of divine strength caused Roman's body to change dramatically, creating a remarkable transformation. Simply laying the foundation made Roman completely different from before, making his appearance and aura unfamiliar even to his relatives. Roman admitted the truth that the change in appearance was proof that he had become a completely different person after that transformation. Roman acknowledged that his change could not be simply explained. During his solitary rigorous training, he had reached an enlightenment, though he could not clearly remember the moment. He continued vaguely that he felt mana had begun to flow within his body. This news stunned his father, who could hardly believe his ears. As someone well-versed in mana power, Romero knew clearly that when mana naturally circulates throughout the body, it shapes an ideal physique, something that only happens to specially chosen individuals. Roman was once considered a fool in the Dmitri family, but since the battle with the Blood Fangs, he continuously achieved accomplishments far beyond all expectations. Although Roman's change surprised many, Romero never forgot one important thing. Roman was still his biological son, regardless of the past. With a determined gaze, Romero advised his son to remember this. No matter how difficult the circumstances, he, as a father, would never turn his back on Roman. He continued, affirming that he was Romero Dmitri, and Roman must not forget that his name was Roman Dmitri, a name carrying the faith and honor of the entire lineage. Roman was silent, moved by his father's sincere advice. He understood that although the road ahead was full of challenges, he would no longer be alone. Elsewhere, a silver-haired warrior was panting amid a fierce battle, struggling to stay balanced on a sword. A sign of an intense fight just occurred. He knelt on the dark battlefield, facing a powerful opponent. In the distance, an authoritative figure observed from above, carrying a terrifying pressure. The old silver-bearded man looked down coldly, contempt clearly visible in his eyes. In his heart, Roman was just a weak, despicable child. Roman closed his eyes, emotions rising, his brows slightly furrowed. He was suppressing anger, maintaining calm in the face of insults. In Roman's thoughts, his father was not cruel or indifferent. That father was a respectable man who would never push his child to death. Roman remained silent, lips pressed tight. Though he said nothing, his eyes conveyed understanding and determination. He smiled gently, expressing gratitude to his father for the first time. A warm, new feeling rose within Roman, a feeling he thought he could get used to. Suddenly, a loud sound came from the door, breaking the quiet atmosphere in the room. Roman turned to look, his gaze serious. He could not hide his curiosity when he saw someone entering at that moment. A girl in a purple dress stood before Roman. Her eyes were filled with regret, as if wanting to express something she had long kept inside. The girl bowed her head to apologize, admitting her mistake in judging hastily and causing a rift between the two families. Her words were sincerely heartfelt. Roman walked forward without hesitation, responding as he went. He said there was no need to apologize, as he had never intended to continue this marriage from the start. They continued walking down the quiet corridor. Roman said there was still one thing he wanted to reveal to her. Roman looked straight ahead, sharing that he had a special reason for deciding to cancel this engagement. He began recounting. It all started from a social gathering of northeastern nobles, the place where everything happened. News of the engagement with the Dmitri family quickly spread, and her acquaintances told her a terrifying rumor. In a dark whispering context, a friend whispered to her, the one she was about to marry, Roman Dmitri, was a drug addict. People said he had used substances that made him lose control and ability to think. The girl finally confessed everything, with a worried expression, saying she just thought Roman should know this truth. Roman was not angry. He quietly said that now he knew all those rumors were false. Nevertheless, Roman admitted that at that time, he could not ignore what he had heard. However, Roman clearly affirmed that no matter what the past was, it would not change their current relationship. Roman turned around, his gaze cold but resolute. He declared to the girl that from now on, she no longer needed to worry about him. The girl stood still, watching Roman's footsteps, her heart filled with mixed emotions. Though silent, her eyes clearly reflected regret and sorrow. Night fell. The bright moonlight shone through the window frame, casting a quiet hue over the room where deep thoughts began to emerge. In the solemn space, Roman sat in an armchair with a pensive look, while Hans, the loyal servant, carefully prepared tea beside him. Recalling the girl's words, Roman thought to himself, drugs, but after careful examination, he confirmed he felt no signs of addiction in this new body. Instead, what Roman sensed was residual poison left behind, the substance this body had absorbed when choosing to end its life. But now, he had completely purified it. Looking up, Roman called the servant's name. Hans. The middle-aged man immediately bowed and respectfully replied, "Yes, sir." Roman suddenly questioned Hans with a serious gaze, asking if he had ever seen him use drugs or show signs of addiction. Taken aback by the unexpected question, Hans reacted with a startled exclamation. Calming down, Roman explained that he did not intend to interrogate or blame. He just wanted to honestly review his past, as if observing from outside. Roman continued that he wanted to examine his past not subjectively, but objectively as an outsider. Hans nodded in agreement, though still somewhat confused. Hans hesitated, his hand trembling slightly as he held the file. He admitted he had never seen Roman directly use drugs, his voice still cautious and worried. Though not witnessing it firsthand, Hans recounted that there were times Roman behaved very strangely. Roman immediately pressed to know when those behaviors occurred. Hans recalled an incident half a month ago when Roman returned from a social gathering. That memory began to clarify the period when the unusual behavior was noticed. Hans continued recalling, affirming that Roman attending parties was not unusual, but the abnormality appeared after he returned home that night. Hans said that when he saw Roman then, his face was pale and his appearance clearly haggard. That was the moment he began to suspect something was wrong. The servant continued, saying that after returning from the party, Roman looked very weak and immediately locked himself in his room, refusing anyone access. From that night onward, Roman continuously requested large amounts of alcohol every night, causing the servant to become suspicious. The servant admitted that at that time he suspected Roman might have used drugs at the party. However, looking back, he felt foolish for thinking that way about his master. Through Flora's recollection, the party Roman attended was a gathering of northeastern nobles, where she had also been present. Roman, with sharp eyes, immediately asked, "Who organized that party?" A question filled with caution and suspicion. The answer came quickly. It was Anthony Barco, eldest son of the Barco family, a name that made Roman's expression grow serious. Roman quickly connected all the events. Before everything happened, he was preparing to marry Flora Lawrence, but after attending Anthony Barco's party, he suddenly changed and behaved strangely. Finally, painful memories surged back. Roman had ended his own life. The eyes of the present person in that body shone with hatred and suspicion as the truth gradually unfolded.